This is the Forbes Books Podcast, conversations with amazing humans who are impacting the world of business and beyond. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila. And as you know, I'm not the manliest man around, but I'm trying. I like to say that we can't change our hardware, but we can update our software from time to time. So I'm hoping today's guest will help me out a little bit. He is an honest-to-goodness cowboy. His name is Craig Wieland. Craig worked his way up from laborer to president of his family's small construction company in Michigan, grew it from a local business in '79 to one of the largest firms in the state with offices across the country before retiring a couple years ago. Now he's making it his mission in life to help the next generation of family business owners by sharing the secrets to success that he learned from seeing his family and other family companies thrive over his long career. Right now, he's working on a book and podcast called Family Business Rules that provide keys and best practices to keeping family enterprises successful without destroying family relationships. Hey, Craig, how you doing?
Doing great, Joe. How are you today?
I'm excellent. And I want to start our chat by talking about dads. So my dad was a Spanish immigrant. He came on a boat, became a machinist, which I still to this day don't know what that means, but I know he worked on ships, he worked in buildings, and he just worked his ass off. And one thing I learned from my father was work ethic, because I saw him leave at the crack ass of dawn, get home at 6 o'clock, eat dinner, and pass out. From an early age, I knew that if you worked really hard, you could have a house, you could have a family, you can go on vacations. And it was sort of, I guess, I hate to use this word because it's tired, but like an organic way of learning how to be a good person and how to be a good person in society. And I know your father had a big part in the role that you're playing now in terms of your kids and your family and the work you do. But can you take me back in those early memories of how your dad set you in the right direction?
Yeah, Joe, you really touch on some really important parts of my life. My dad and my two grandfathers. I have a painting here in my library. If you can see it, I can show it's over my shoulder. You probably can't see it, but that's my dad. I commissioned my dad and my two grandfathers, and the painting's called Giants because that's what these guys are. My dad passed away at 54. He had Lou Gehrig's disease, so around 45, he kind of knew that he wasn't going to make it. And, rather than becoming sour, he blossomed. He turned into the Don Wieland that we all knew. I mean, he was philosophical. He was very spiritual. And that was what my dad was when I was a kid. I'm going to give you an example. Like the other kids in church, they didn't really want to go to church. Their dads drug them to church. We wanted to go to church with our dad because he was the same at home as he was at church. He wasn't a different person. But the real reason we wanted to go with church is because what he did for us during the week. Like we were born and raised Mennonite, and Mennonites, you don't play Little League. You don't play sports at all. It's kind of like Amish with cars. And my dad broke the rules and became our Little League coach. And we knew he was breaking the rules for us. And he would take us to games on Wednesday nights, and we would have our church clothes in the backseat of the car. So we'd have the Little League game on Wednesday night, and we'd jump in the car and we would change into our church clothes to go to Wednesday night prayer meeting. And we wanted to because our dad he played baseball with us. I wasn't very good at hitting. So my dad went and bought a bushel basket full of hardballs and hung a canvas on the back of the garage and painted a square, which is my strike zone. And he would sit there and he would throw these fastballs at me in the strike zone until his arm fell off. And I went from, not being able to hit at all to making the All-Star game my third year at Little League just because of my dad, and my dad would take me on business trips with him. So we would go to, I remember one time I went to Shreveport, Louisiana. What the world? I was probably 10 years old. And I met a guy by the name of Tim McElroy, and he owned McElroy Metals that my dad did business with back then. And literally 50 years later, Wieland, my dad's company I took over, opened an office in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I gave a speech. And afterwards, this real tall drink of water comes up to me, and he has to be about 80 years old. And he says, "You don't know me, but I'm Tim McElroy." And I said, "Oh, yes, I do know you. I met you when I was 10. And he says, "I remember meeting you when you were 10. He said, "I thought It was so cool that Don Wieland brought his kid to a business meeting with him in Shreveport, Louisiana. Well, it's his dad from northern Michigan. And that happened a lot. We would go to conventions. My dad bought me Norman Vincent Peale's book, The Power of Positive Thinking, when I was 12 years old. And I remember at a family gathering, everybody was in, they were having a great time. And I was out in the car reading Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale because I was so enthralled with it. Zig Ziglar, Og Mandino, these were guys that, I mean, we lived, eat, and breathe. If Zig, they didn't even have to say his last name, Og, whoever named their kid Og, but he was phenomenal. So now I'm giving my grandsons Zig Ziglar, Og Mandino books. And, it's a legacy that my dad left me.
That's great. And you're a cowboy. I mean, you're literally wearing a cowboy hat right now in Michigan, which is kind of, I didn't realize there were cowboys in Michigan. But I remember when I was a kid, there was a song in the 90s by Paula Cole, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? And I feel like the old school cowboy doesn't exist. The cowboy is a lot more nuanced than it used to be, just like, hey, I'm going to do cowboying stuff. I'm going to ride my horse. I'm going to work on a farm, manual labor. And now cowboy feels like it's different. So tell me about how the transition of a cowboy from when you were growing up, as a little kid, to what a cowboy is today. Can you talk to me about that sort of transformation?
Yeah, are you familiar with Glenn Campbell?
Of course, yeah, Rhinestone Cowboy, yeah.
Yeah, Rhinestone Cowboy. That song was a defining song in my life because when he sang Rhinestone Cowboy, I thought to myself, you know what? There's a lot of guys out there who are wearing cowboy hats who've never been thrown off a horse. In fact, maybe they've never been on a horse. And so I look at being a cowboy as being authentic. Do I have horses? Yes. Do I ride them? Yes. Do they throw me? Yes. Have I broken bones? Yes. I really look at, the country music singers wearing their cowboy hats. That's great. If you're not against me, you're for me, but don't confuse that. Go to the Cheyenne Rodeo, which I've been a couple times, and you'll find out there's real cowboys out there. I mean, these guys are out there and they're riding bulls and they're driving cattle. And so it's a small niche. I think Yellowstone, the whole phenomenon of Yellowstone has kind of brought that back. Fortunately, I've watched about half of one, and I thought this is the stupidest thing I've ever saw. And because Kevin Costner's not a cowboy, and everybody doesn't live in Bozeman, Montana, and drink espresso at lunchtime. And so I look at being a cowboy as being close to the earth. I mean, I will get up in the morning and it's 5 degrees outside, and the Holy Spirit will kind of tap me on the shoulder and say, don't eat breakfast till you feed your horses. Because they're out there and they're cold and they're hungry. And, if you drive by and the water's frozen and you're on your way to a business meeting and you're in a 3-piece suit or not 3-piece anymore, but you're in a suit, stop the truck, back up, go out, unthaw the water in your horse trough. It gives you a sense of duty and honor that you're taking care of these animals and they come before you. And horses they're really interesting. I mean, if you're nervous, they're nervous. You're calm, they're calm. You're excited, you're frustrated, they are whatever you are. And, that's lost on a lot of people, but it's not lost on a cowboy.
It's so funny. I mean, there's a term when I was a kid, it was like a poser. What's your cowboy poser radar like? When you see someone like, you mentioned Kevin Costner, but when you see somebody out there with their $300 Tacova boots and their $200 Stetson hat, you're like, that guy's not a cowboy.
Yeah. Alan Jackson's got a song, He's Gone Country, look at them boots. And that's not what it takes. I don't know. I let other people be themselves. I don't criticize them, but I know who I am. I got to split wood all the time. I got to ride horses. I got to do the things on my little ranch here that make me happy. And it's pretty simple life. I think a lot of these are great business principles, quite frankly, dedication, laser-like focus that you can take into the business world. But when I come home and my shoulders just drop and I go out and I talk to my horse. And I mean, there's days, I'll be honest with you, there's days you go out to ride your horse and your horse is like, not today. Nope, it ain't happening today. And you can get on, but you're going to get off. And you go, all right. And the answer is not whipping the horse. You can't hit the horse between the eyes with a 2x4. You got to go, okay, what's the matter with you? What's wrong? I mean, you're not feeling good. Something's wrong here. And you try and figure out what's wrong with the horse and they don't speak English. You got to listen. You got to be a good listener.
So I want to talk about construction a little bit. So within the last year, I built a home in Charleston, South Carolina. I didn't, obviously, but I went to and I'm not going to name the name, a large home builder in the United States of America. And it was the first time I'd ever been a home owner, never really had to do stuff. I've always had like apartments and townhouse. So if something went wrong, I would just call the super and be like, hey, fix this. So now that I'm homeowner, it's a weird shift in mindset. But one thing I noticed that as you know, there's this building boom over the last few years since the pandemic that sort of picked up after the Great Recession, where they stopped building homes. But now all of a sudden they threw the fire hose on and started building homes. But the problem was, in theory, building all these homes is great. The execution, Craig, man, that's really lacking. My house had so many issues. A year later, I'm still finding out they had to rip some like siding off, and they noticed that they had two giant holes underneath the siding from someone using a saw, and I was getting a leak. I was getting a leak in a brand new house, Craig. So tell me about the current state of construction, because I feel like now we're building more than ever in my lifetime, but it doesn't seem like there's enough qualified people doing the building. Tell me more about that.
You know, Joe, when I was raised there, the union was really strong here in Michigan. And so we had apprentice programs, journeyman programs. Guys came up. By the time they were swinging a hammer, they had already been in the industry for 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, there was a real culture of craftsmanship. And then production came in, and I think maybe low interest rates had a lot to do with that. You know, back when I got married in 1981, prime rate was 21%. There weren't a lot of people building houses. Those who were building houses, they wanted to build houses that would last. And then, you know, along came 3% mortgages, and all of a sudden there's now literally a million homes a year being built. And you can't just turn that spigot on without a training program. And so the unions used to do that. But now people can't afford houses built by union people. And so I'm going to get really unpolitically correct with you. We have to figure out our immigration policies, because a lot of our labor in construction comes from south of the border. I learned Spanish. I took Rosetta Stone, the full Rosetta Stone course, so that when I got out on the job site, I could speak with these workers, because otherwise, you know, they speak no English, you speak no Spanish, you're not going to communicate a whole lot. That's the 900-pound gorilla in the construction business right now. We've got to get these people who are here illegally somehow, some way, a green card. And not only that, we've got to make it permanent so that they say, okay, I'm willing to train, I'm willing to spend some time, I'll buy some tools. And other than that, it's like transient. And we've literally, especially in the South, and we did a lot of building in Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas. We would show up, our managers would show up, and like all of our roofers would be gone. They'd just be gone. They didn't show up. And we would call the subcontractor and say, none of your workers showed up today. And he would say, yeah, I know. One of my competitors drove by and he's giving them all 25 cents an hour pay increase. And so they all just quit and went to work for him. You know, how do you deal with that, right? And in Florida, that's not uncommon at all. So, I mean, the construction industry, it has lagged way, way behind other businesses, in automation, on technology. How do we get more efficiency out of these workers? How do we do a lot more with less? And technology is one thing that happened. I mean, it used to be a 6-man survey crew. Now you have 1 man and a GPS stick. Okay, good. We freed that up because we don't have 6 guys anymore. You know, how can we do that with the other trades? You know, how can we manufacture parts of a house like the bathroom in a factory on an assembly line and ship it to the job site and install it? And it's all done perfect. It's done right. You know, your experience is not unusual at all. I'm a builder, and I have a hard time getting people to come to my house and do things correctly. So it's a matter of dealing with the cards that we have, and the biggest issue is labor, and the biggest issue of labor is immigration. We were a little fortunate in the last downturn, because in the commercial business, you got a lot of guys who cut and weld. Well, when we turned down, they all went to Williston, North Dakota, and worked in the oil fields, because when that was down, oil was up and guys went there. and they could use their skills of cutting and welding steel in the oil fields. And then when the oil dropped down, they came back to work in commercial construction. We lost a lot of guys to the oil fields. And then, so you're not only competing against other contractors, you're competing against other industries who can use these same skills to drill oil wells or make cars or whatever it is. So it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Well, thank you for dipping your toe in that, because I feel like, you know me, I'm a New Yorker, card-carrying liberal, so I'm a little more lenient on the immigration side, especially coming from two immigrants. My father was Hispanic, like I mentioned. My mother was a Cuban refugee. So I know that the importance of having these people here in the country, and I feel like it's become this political football where and a word I mentioned earlier, nuance, is completely gone. Because to play to the crowd on the conservatives, it's like, wall, shut down, no immigration. But real business people know if you were to do that, businesses would go out of business if you did that. But unfortunately, that part of the conversation is not talked about. It's all about walls and wire fences. And I feel like this polarization in our country politically, we sort of lose track of, eye off the ball kind of thing, because we're like, hey, listen, guys, if we do what you're saying, which I know you probably don't want to do, but you're kind of like, you're feeding, red meat to your base. But man, if that were to happen, Craig, can you imagine, like, let's live in a dystopian world where whatever happens, the Conservative Party takes over the country, takes over both sides of the legislature, the White House, and they say, let's build this wall, no more immigrants. Craig, what do you think? Now that you're a writer, write the scenario of what would happen if that took place in America.
Yeah, we'd go back to the dark ages. I sit on the board of directors of Vesta. We're a Mexican, Mexico City-based developer. We're traded on New York Stock Exchange, so I have my foot firmly on both sides of the border. I go to Mexico every 3 months. We were literally in a meeting about 5 years ago, and one of the board of directors, he kind of went white, and he held up his phone and he said, Donald Trump just said that he's going to shut the border down between the United States and Mexico. And like everybody around the room knew what that meant. That meant we were out of business. And thousands of U.S., Chinese, German, Italian, Israeli companies in Mexico making product, shipping into the United States, they're out of business. It would destroy the economy. We have so integrated the economy in North America that a wall shutting down. Now, there's a difference between building a wall to limit immigration and shutting down the border.
I'm not going there. But that would require nuance. I get you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, but I'm going to stop you. Donald Trump did say, I'm going to shut down the border. He didn't say, I'm going to build a wall that day. He had been saying that. He actually said, I'm shutting the border down, which is an extension of building the wall, meaning everything we do is good, everything they do is bad. So we're going to build this wall so they can't come over here and do bad things. From an economic standpoint, it's a disaster. Yes, I'm a writer. Nobody would buy that book because you don't want to go there. In fact, it's kind of interesting. You bring this up. We're all really, really frustrated with inflation right now. Well, okay, but we all know we're buying a lot less from China because of the trade issues. Well, guess what? When you buy less from China, the stuff you buy, the price goes up. You can't have it both ways. You can't wear a $9 T-shirt and not buy from China. If you want the T-shirt made in Pittsburgh, it's going to cost probably $75. That's the way it is. I remember, and I tell this story, Joe, when I was first married, I thought, you know what, it's 1981. We're going to have a Christmas tree, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to put a whole lot of lights on that. And I remember going to the hardware store in Bay City, Michigan, and I bought 15 feet of lights for $50.
Wow.
Well, they were all made in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at Philips Lighting. That's 50 years ago. Today, you can buy 300 feet of lights for $15. They're not made in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So the fact of the matter is, what do I do? Do I say, no, I have to support this local economy? And it gets even a little worse than that. We even say, even buy American. Well, really, what? I tell people, there's a reason Derek Jeter doesn't mow his own lawn. Why? Why doesn't Derek Jeter mow his own lawn? He can certainly afford a lawnmower. He can certainly afford the gas. Well, why doesn't he? Well, it's called comparative advantage. He plays better shortstop in New York Yankees than he does mowing lawn. And the guy that mows his lawn is better at that. Nobody's going to pay to watch him play shortstop in New York Yankees. You do what you have an advantage in. So when I hear this, build a wall, build a wall, build a wall, shut those people out, shut their products out, we need to buy American. I'm like, you just don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about, but it sells.
Well, Craig, let's wrap things up on a bright note, because right now, to borrow a cowboy term, you're not just riding out in the sunset. You want to leave a lasting legacy and help folks that run family businesses. We've from the jump, we've talked about the importance of your grandfather and father, what led you here, building a business with your family. Why is it so important to you at this point in your life to, I guess, prophesize and talk about family businesses?
I wrote the other day in my journal, I want to stay relevant. Reading books in front of the fire might be fun, but it's not relevant. It doesn't impact people's lives. For instance, yesterday I worked the polls here in Michigan on primary day, and I sat alongside Democrats and Republicans. Nobody argued, nobody fought. We just wanted to get it right. And at the end of the night, we got it right. To within one vote, we got it right. And I was relevant yesterday, and I was rubbing shoulders with my neighbors, and I was listening to them. They were listening to me. We were building each other up. And that's what kind of life I want to live. And then I wanted to have a purpose. I don't feel called to preach the gospel. That's not what I'm saying. I don't feel called to be a missionary. But I do have a passion for business, and I do have a passion for a niche of business, which is family business. And I think I've got something to say that's relevant. And I actually think, maybe this is my last hurrah. This is it. Okay, I've done this for 42 years. This is what I've learned. This is the book I've wrote. These are the people that I've talked to that give me credibility and authority in this area. Listen to me, buy my book, and it will be relevant, and hopefully you won't destroy your family in going into business with them. And I will be honest with you, Joe. I rarely. I have an artist friend who, when I told him about the book, he went, "Huh, really? People argue?" I'm like, "Oh, for crying out, Dennis, you got to be kidding me!" But he's a single artist in his studio his whole entire life. He's never been in business. Other than him, literally every other person I've talked to, when I tell them, I'm writing a business a book about family business, you kind of got to hate it. They're like, "Unbelievable! You can't believe what happened to my family. My uncles don't talk to each other. Or we and almost without exception, people have a story." And I'm thinking, then we need to solve this problem. I can't solve, the Arab-Israeli crisis. That one I can't solve. But maybe I can solve two brothers going into business together and put it together in a way that it doesn't destroy the relationship. So that's my focus. That's my vision. That's my relevance today.
That's awesome. Well, looking forward to what you're writing, the podcast you're going to be working on. It's gonna be a blast. I guess Twilight is Twilight can last a long time, so you could be doing this for the next 20, 30 years, Craig.
Yeah, I know, though. I don't even think that way. I think about today. They say you only live once. That's not true. You only die once. You live every day, and so that's where I am. I'm only going to die once, and it didn't happen this morning. So we're going to attack today like crazy. Got up, fed my horses, looked at them, and they were doing good, and that made me feel really good. Now I'm going to go to a friend's party because his son 2 years ago took his life, and we're going to memorialize him tonight. We're going to raise a glass, and those are some serious things in life, and I'm hoping to, help my friend through this grieving period that'll never end, ever. And so I need to be relevant. And so that's what I'm doing, not staying home watching TV.
Good for you. Craig, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Joe, thank you. Really, I like your enthusiasm. I like your pointedness. You've taught me a lot this morning, just listening to you and how you are posing these questions. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I've learned a lot this morning.
Oh, that's very sweet. You're welcome. And that's going to do it for another Forbes Books podcast. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. You can always connect with me on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Joe Pardavila or TikTok at J Pardavila. And please, don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.